Zach, Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Howdy.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. So, for those of you who don't know, these gentlemen are from Block of Horror. They are an NFT film project focusing on horror as a genre. But why don't you guys go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you guys do and kind of what your ethos is?
So Block of Horror actually um, is even more than a cinema. So we're aiming to really build a media platform that uses kind of the best of cinematic technology with virtual reality, with choose your own adventure. And so inevitably, excuse me, a little crick in my throat. Um, we film is where we hail from as far as like professional experience out of Los Angeles, but ultimately we want to fuse kind of the best mediums and techniques within storytelling to almost really pave a new way of uh, telling stories. And we think via the metaverse and utilizing blockchain technology, we're going to be able to kind of fuse the best of theatrical live performance, the best of cinematic performance, the best of any kind of gamifications, and fuse it all together in kind of like a new wave of entertainment and experience and added value. So just kind of like to set the stage. It's ultimately our goal is to really. That's why we called it Block of Horror, is because it's the blockchain of horror. It's infusing all forms of media, all forms of experience, so that we can really tell new, innovating stories in creative ways, and push the boundaries on the audience kind of interaction um, live and helping to tell a story. So that's kind of a broad stroke overview.
And definitely utilizing Web3 to its fullest by kind of breaking down that fourth wall and
Mhm.
letting the community in and having a voice and a vote in the creative process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to kind of encompass what you guys are doing. Because you're right, it's not just film. That's where I kind of got drawn into it. Was originally when you guys were just talking about the film aspect, and it's been really cool to see how the community has kind of grown around that broader idea. Now, one of the things that you guys have in your arsenal right now is a VR movie theater. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with that and why it's kind of a cornerstone of your community engagement right now?
Yeah. Mike, you go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, kind of just incorporating some kind of metaverse is always something that we wanted to bring to the table. Um, some kind of immersion into our world of Block of Horror that kind of, you come in and you feel like you're in a new world, you're in a new place, and you can experience our content there. Um, you know, as this industry kind of goes into the metaverse and opens up this new layer of immersion and creativity, we definitely want to be on the forefront of that. So yeah, we that was one of the first things we thought about, and we're all kind of gamers in a sense and have been playing video games for a long time. So even if you go back to really any console, it's telling a story of um, uh, it's bringing immersion into it in a creative, interactive way.
Yeah, that's kind of the experience that I've had being in the space and getting to see it. So I guess you guys said you guys are gamers. How did kind of your experience with gaming kind of growing up with the earlier console generations? And definitely I did. I think my first console was PS1. You guys probably would have been SNES era ish, and Dogira is a gaming studio, which has definitely influenced how we've approached some of our content. But how does kind of seeing the evolution of all these different entertainment mediums make you excited for the metaverse? Why did you guys choose the metaverse play over something else, or like just building a brand? I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah. I can start. I know Mike has a lot to add. For me, a part of it is, I've always liked to look at storytelling. I have like a theater Shakespeare background. And what I appreciate about Shakespeare's kind of producing work beyond just him acting and writing, obviously, is, you know, he really embraced the idea of like, how do I make content that is mass appealing, you know, for anybody from any intellectual level, from the groundlings, as they say, to the Queen of England, that they can all enjoy it simultaneously, so that it has mass market appeal, but that also is innovative in how the stories unfold and how they're told. And it goes to show, like, if Shakespeare can make a play that's millions of words, it seems like, and speed through it in 2 hours and entertain people who cannot read while entertaining the Queen of England, it goes to show the power of storytelling, right? Like, at the end of the day, the words don't even matter. You know, communication is largely visual, and it's largely through sound and through other means. And so in today's terms, when people see a Shakespeare play, if it's done well, it doesn't matter what they're saying. You know, do you know what alabaster means? It doesn't matter. It's how I use it. It's how the inflection of the voice and the actor and the context of a story as he's about to be beheaded by the evil witch. Like, now there's context to it. So just from my experience in the theater and studying kind of Shakespeare, and then through the history of theatrics and into cinema, I just think, you know, our whole approach is geared around capturing a wide audience intuitively. And so it's not just about one thing, you know, like, because the assumption is we're the block of horror, and horror has a connotation with a lot of people to be kind of like maybe an all boys club that's geared towards like gore. And it's like, no, hold your horses. It's going to be much more than that. Horror has many genres, many subgenres, and it has mass appeal, you know, going back to, not reiterate the Shakespeare point, but Macbeth and Titus Andronicus. Titus Andronicus is one of the most gory stories you've ever seen. And you know, a girl gets raped and her hands cut off and her tongue cut out. Like, and that's in a 500-year-old theatrical play. And so horror transcends, to me, history of storytelling. And so we just want to be able to create a platform that really can push the envelope to reach as many audience members as possible, not just to sell content, but to actually create a new experience around how storytelling is told and received by an audience. And then anything that we can conceive of from that point. So that, to me, is kind of like my starting point of like big picture, little history lesson, I guess, for me personally. And then Mike has also some really interesting insights.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
definitely
think
take
I
it.
think yeah, I think the tech involved is so cool, and how you can come into this field with bringing a community in and having them have some kind of input into it. Zach and I kind of call this like a super fan experience, right? If you're like super into something, like if you're a big fan of Marvel or Star Wars, what exactly can you do? You can buy stuff, but that's about it. Like how do you interact with it, and how do you make a difference in the content? You know, I kind of always go back to, you know, what if the Star Wars community, like what if Lucasfilm and Disney gave the community the option to choose what this new character's lightsaber would be, like what color that would be. And if it becomes orange based on a community vote, that becomes canon. That's now the lore forever in Star Wars, and that was chosen by the community. I think that's super empowering and will really bring people back and want people to continue consuming that stuff and to be a part of it and breaking that wall and letting them come inside. So
And
any kind of like interactive way, go for it, Zach.
yeah, to add to that, Mike, is also this idea of improving the producer to consumer relationship. Kind of, I think, to Mike's point, is there's this, you know, not Hollywood machine, but media machine that we create it, you consume it, and then that's the
Mm.
relationship, and then it ends. And I think, especially when it comes to like fandom and storytelling and art, like, there's this misnomer, I feel like, running in art circles currently, that it's my art, right? Like, this is me, my art. And it's like, no, art is a shared experience. Ultimately, going back to the theater as an example, when you're doing a play, right, is the part of the best play interactions are the ones where they break the fourth wall and they include the audience into the fold. So let's bring you to a current example. If you look at the recent Daredevil, not Daredevil, who's why am I saying Daredevil? Mike, help me with the Marvel, Ryan Reynolds.
Oh,
What's it
Deadpool.
called?
Oh, Deadpool.
Deadpool. Sorry, the new Deadpool movies, right? The reason those movies are so kind of innovative is it's a throwback to something that's been utilized for 500 years, which is an audience aside. It's breaking the fourth wall and saying, hey, audience, wink, wink, we're going to include you into the joke, into the story. And when it's done, when it's executed right, the audience feels like they're a part of the joke, making fun of the executives who don't know anything about content making, right? Like as a joke. So yeah, that to me is just an example of like the power of bringing the community into the fold across the board. But,
Yeah, I suppose. Gosh, you guys really triggered my my college literature degree stuff with the talking about Shakespeare and all that. So I want to get to some of the like the theory behind crafting a good story in a little bit here. But I did want to give you guys a chance to dig in a little bit more into the one of the key features of your project being that you want to allow the community to help inform how you guys create what you're creating and what you're going to be putting out. If you'd be able to go in more into that, I think that's definitely one of the most innovative things. You guys care a lot about intellectual property and kind of sharing that with your community. So if you could give us some more insight into that.
yeah, I'll touch on that briefly. So basically, utilizing our voting portal and obviously like Discord to start, we'll provide basically like proposals and options. And so from right from the start, people will get to vote. Basically, once we get to Genesis, the Genesis Mint, you'll get to vote which one of our 13 movie concepts becomes a feature film first. So right from the start, basically the audience is included and they choose, well, which one goes into production, pre-production, we write the script, et cetera, et cetera. And so through that process, kind of like if you look at the Jenkins, the valet model, we'll propose with our creative leads options like, hey, when Hank goes down the alleyway, like who jumps at him? Like, is it a rabbit? Is it a killer? Is it, whatever we come up with the community, we'll infuse it with their kind of input and spirit into the content to various degrees. Obviously, we don't want to overstep our boundaries with, let's say, our creative leads. Let's say we got a Steven Spielberg to direct a film. We're not going to tell him how to direct a film, but might he be curious about in Act 2 when, Frank goes the wrong way, what happens to him? I think he might. So I think that answers a part of your question. What was the other part?
You did kind of actually answer the question. I guess the other part would have been what can like community members expect when they participate in your Genesis Mint, kind of the IP rights that you guys have talked a lot about in your AMAs and stuff.
Yeah, so the Genesis Mint is probably gonna be a little further towards the fall. The first mint we're gonna do is a free to claim mint for our Prologue NFT. This is basically a precursor to the Genesis Mint. We're also looking at releasing one of our movie concepts to basically build a piece of IP around with the community. So we'll already kind of start that process basically right away. And that mint should be coming in the next few weeks, to be honest. We don't have a set date yet. We're finishing the art and making sure everything's buttoned up with the contract and the website, et cetera. But basically, when it comes to IP rights, and part of the reason why we wanted to do 13 pieces of original content for the Genesis Mint is to be flexible enough to basically allow for the community to license, or at least have the opportunity to co-license or commercialize IP that we build. So not necessarily all of it, because for people who don't know, if you're trying to, let's say, get a movie distributed with Netflix, a central entity has to have the rights to that, let's say, film, for Netflix to say, you know what, handshake deal, sign the contract, we'll buy your IP and put it on our Netflix, right? So we can't necessarily say, you know what, guys, everything's open for everybody, do whatever you want, because then we have no control and it's going to be very difficult to get any kind of deals with any type of Web2 distribution, partnerships, all that kind of stuff. So what we thought would be a good idea is kind of like a season one. We have 13 various forms of content. We'll start by, let's say, doing poster 2 is open to the community to basically do whatever you want with, while we build content for it as well. Poster 4 is going to be off limits to start so that we can build IP into it and have a chance to actually like get a distribution deal, get some partnerships, essentially, build the brand, build the IP out. But the ultimate goal is, as we continue to push these choke points in Web 2, we want to position to open up all the IP so that at least the holders and the community can have IP either co-ownership or commercialization. It gets very sticky in Web 2. Like, there's a lot of legalities that you have to be honest about, and nobody has it figured out, by the way. So anyone who says they do, like, there's a lot of guessing game. But so what we're trying to do is really be diligent and keep our options open so that if this starts to work really well in this direction, we can push fully ahead in that direction. But if that doesn't work, well, we have other IP that does work in another direction. So let's push that way. And so that's kind of our strategy, is we want to be malleable enough to allow for whatever choke points or obstacles arise to not sabotage our ability to basically continue what we're building. Like, sure, if poster 3 gets shut down because we made a bad decision in how we attack the IP licensing, you know what? We can pivot to other things. It's not going to affect the broader scope of the community and the brand and what we're building. But it also gives us a chance to push envelopes. And that's kind of the point, is let's test what happens when you open up a piece of IP. Let's say we create a movie with the community, completely without unions, completely without anybody, and direct distribution back into the Web3 space. We can, the community can own it with us. The community can have co-shared ownership. And let's say the movie makes $10 million and Frank, who owns an NFT, wants to do a spinoff. Fuck it, he can. There's nothing, who's stopping him, right? It's ultimately all about contracts, and it's all about the legalities of like what's in the fine print. But if our fine print says any of our holders can do whatever the heck they want, we created the IP, we open it up to the community, then it's essentially it's theirs too. And that's ultimately the goal, is we would love to create, let's say, the next Freddy Krueger franchise, but we don't own the IP exclusively. Our community owns it with us. That's the ultimate goal. And so if we can create that kind of IP opportunity, and obviously this is it's a process. This will take time. It's not going to happen in year one to have that kind of scale. But in time, if we can create a brand and we can create that kind of lore and depth, the goal is to open it up to the community, kind of to Mike's point, like a Star Wars, and really, have your community be able to commercialize Star Wars along with Disney, let's say. So that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's that is a lot to process there. I really admire you guys.
It's tricky, yeah.
Yeah.
And just to kind of summarize that,
yeah.
Basically, we have many story opportunities that some are going to go into buckets of, yes, you can basically commercialize with us in however way you want, and then some things will be off limits for now while we navigate partnerships, et cetera. And we'll be updating that information once we roll all that out, on a rolling basis, if that makes sense.
Admire that you guys are willing to kind of embark on a very exploratory process, because a lot in this space we don't see a ton of innovation in the ways that I think matters most, especially to people who are like diehard Web3 natives. We see a lot of people kind of just iterating on the corners, the really easy stuff, like more PFPs, more more typical kind of
more cash
game
grabs,
launches. Yeah, just really, really bottom of the barrel kind of stuff. And not that there's not a place for limited innovation, but I think, it's really interesting when we see guys like yourselves taking, like, you guys came up in theater and film, and you want to take everything you've learned and reshape it for a decentralized space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really cool. Now I want to dig in a little bit into to story structure and why you guys kind of picked horror is your genre. You very correctly laid out that horror isn't just blood, guts, and gore. It's psychological. It's emotive. There's a lot to horror that has been founded in literature. I studied Gothic literature in college, so I'm very well versed in the early days of what essentially became modern sci-fi to a point. So what brought you guys into loving horror enough to kind of challenge people's expectations of it in this Web3 space?
There's
Yeah, go ahead,
definitely a
Mike.
lot of. Oh yeah. I'll just jump in real fast. Yeah, there's horror is such an interesting genre because of the subgenres. There's so many different avenues that you can go that still stay in the same overall blanket genre. And with our 13 pieces of IP that we have, everything is different. So we're able to be really varied here versus like something like a drama that can just be, a run of the mill thing. Um, Also, just the horror genre in general and horror movies, there's lots of twists and turns, and I think that opens up the floodgates for great storytelling opportunities, especially with the community, to have a lot of varied options and decisions throughout the creative process. Um, and Zach could probably touch on this too, but like just horror in general and horror films have really great ROI. It doesn't take like the budget of Star Wars or The Matrix or something huge to make a great film. The first Saw movie was something around $1 million and it like 150x. So lots of great opportunities for horror here.
Yeah, and to tally on that with Mike, and another point is horror has a really strong niche community. It's actually quite big, but we call it niche because it's not like mainstream. Mike made up a good point on another podcast that it's all rated R, right? So you can't really cater to like 13-year-olds, even though maybe sometimes they do. But because it has such a strong community, right? What's the big talking point in Web3 is, oh, you got to have a community. And so for us, it's kind of a no-brainer in that, well, who's got the best film community? And it's pretty much horror and or Marvel, comic book, Star Wars, right? Like Harry Potter. But those are almost like specific pieces of IP. Horror is a genre. And it's kind of like all encompassing. And so we believe once we're able to really kind of like create bridges for the horror enthusiasts, especially to come aboard what we think this is exactly the vehicle that they're going to really appreciate. It's the kind of thing that not only onboards the horror community into Web3, but by bringing in a strong community into Web3, it opens potentially the floodgates for more communities and other niches to go, wait a second, if the horror community is doing it, I wonder if we can do it in the way we want to do it. So it's on a very deep level from a kind of strategy perspective. It's in part also because there's such a good strong community there that once they gravitate to a Web3 presence, it's like there's no looking back. Like once they're in, they're going to be in and they're going to get it. And they're the ones that would really get it, because if you're a horror fan, who doesn't want to decide how people die in a movie? Like it's kind of like that's why I like horror. Like I want to be able to choose or add a joke or create some cool lore that makes it in the film, because especially because it's horror, there's opportunity to really push boundaries that if you're doing a drama or a romantic comedy or an action film, like you kind of can't do certain things. Like it's got to be very tight knit. But in horror, it's really just like, is it scary or is it in a funny way making fun of being scared? Then it's kind of free game and you can do whatever you want. So it just gives us a lot of options, strong community, kind of like what Mike said. It's also more affordable to make, generally speaking, horror compared to other genres as well. And we just, in general, we like it. We've been building horror ideas and concepts and scripts for a while now. So kind of hits all the buttons for us.
So would you guys say you fall more in the like monster aliens spooky stuff camp versus the like slasher everybody dies, it's just the blood fountain the entire time? Where would you guys say you kind of fall in your appreciation of what's available in the horror genre?
I'll let
We're
Mike go
kind of
first.
everywhere. We're kind of all over the place. You know, we have some of our stuff is slasher, which we're very excited to show you this this particular piece of IP, which is based on an urban legend in Illinois.
I
Um,
grew up in Illinois.
but then then you probably know what it is.
Tell me. If you can, it's okay.
Uh,
Maybe another
it
time.
has to do with okay. It has to do with corn. That's all I'll give away. Um, not the band. Um, but like we have sci-fi, we have psychological, witchcraft, kind of playing in all avenues, and yeah, it's just very motley and very entertaining, I think.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's there's so many things you can do in the horror genre, because really all it takes is making, turning an everyday concept and making it deeply unsettling and kind of just following the outworking of that. Because like even the advent of horror in the Gothic, well, I wouldn't say advent because we can go back to stage plays like Macbeth and I forget the other title you threw out there. But like that in itself was unsettling and scary. What we started seeing in the Gothic movement was like these scary stories that were political commentary, basically,
Hmm.
but done in a way that it was a lot of rich people and powerful people going crazy and becoming dangerous, and like what the outworking and the fallout of that. And it was often considered kind of smut. It was like the crap book that you pick up, from the local printer, and you flip through it and you get it done in a day. And that was kind of how it was treated. But
Hmm.
it's interesting to see how horror has become kind of a staple genre. How do you think how, how did the genre kind of become such a mainstay for people? Is it just because it's fun and there's fewer rules, or what do you think makes it such a popular thing for people?
Well, I would say first, I think it depends which avenue you're looking at it from. If you're looking at it from a Hollywood perspective, almost not everyone, but almost everyone gets their start in a horror genre piece in Hollywood, and especially from like a director side of things. And generally, it's because it's easy access, right? And that's also another reason why it appeals to us in Web3 is we really don't want to gatekeep things. Like our strategy is not to build a brand that then hoards everything. It's the opposite. It's to build a brand that actually includes the community into everything. And so, you know, from a gatekeeping perspective, horror is like where a lot of these amazing directors, new and old, essentially got their start because it's affordable and it's easier, and there's not all these rules, and it's and I understand that a lot of the unions and Hollywood, et cetera, have a lot of things in place seemingly to protect people at some stages, but not everyone's ready for the big stage, so to speak. You can't have a new director direct $100 million movie. He needs to direct maybe an $800,000 movie, but then you have to allow him to make that $800,000 movie, and you can't really afford to do that in the middle of Los Angeles, right? Like, I mean, you can, but it gets more and more difficult because there are more and more rules and all this other kind of stuff. So for our purposes, we thought finding that nice bridge between the two of we can create content without without anything holding us back, and then we can also lean into the more structured Web 2 type protections for people as well. But ultimately, we want to put the audience and the community first. And so the best way to do that is to have something that's not so gate kept, that is more open, that has more possibility to explore new, like the last few days, me and Mike have been coming up with story ideas and horror genres that were like, wait a second, no one's ever done a horror movie about this. And we're like, well, that would be perfect for Block of Horror someday, right? Because we don't have any rules, like in the sense that it's Web3, it's whatever the community wants. Like, we're not catering to our distribution outlet of Netflix's bottom line. Like, no. This is, hey, community, we have an idea that we think you would enjoy being a part of. What do you think? Think that's a good idea? You do? Great. We'll make it and we'll distribute it right to you and to all your friends. Like that kind of symbiotic relationship like doesn't exist in the real world yet. And I think that's a big part of what we want to strategize to do is put the power, the producing power almost to at least to a degree right in your community's hands. And so then they have a vested interest. They're more attached to seeing its success. And they'll probably enjoy it more if it's good. So, it's more fun if you like get to see something you participated in and see like, oh, that's really cool. Like, and I got to do something with it. Oh, so.
Yeah, totally. What do you think the future of that looks like, right? Because you guys are starting that trend with what you're doing now. How do you think it looks like 5, 10, years from now when you guys have put out several movies, several different pieces of media? Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, it's hard because macro economic type things can really hurt anything and everything at any given point. But besides all that, just from a like, if things go a normal way ish, I mean, I really think you may not be a successful company if you do not have a successful Web3 presence. Like, I mean that almost at any company and anywhere. And obviously that could be in 5 years, 10, 30 years, like who knows? But I think we're going to get to a point where everything is an integration into a better experience for your quote unquote consumer. And I think it's going to be by way of storytelling, by way of experience, by way of more imaginative consumer producer relationship that isn't just basically pumping Nike's bags so that they make all the money and you're left holding the socks, right? Like the idea is that like, no, if you want brand loyalty, you got to give something back. This whole idea of like, oh, you should like my Nike shoes versus my Adidas shoes. The question to me is, why should I like either? Neither of them give a shit about you. Neither of them actually even pretend to give a shit about you, nor the people that they exploit in other countries potentially. And so that to me is where we're going to start to see change, is the competition is going to start moving to where the consumer actually wants it, which is, well, what else do I get for buying your socks? Like for my loyalty to your brand, I like Nike, but why should I like it more than Adidas? Okay, I get some more activations, I get some more utility, I get a little more insight into how Nike operates as a company. I get some stock maybe in the company. Like, I don't know. Like there's all kinds of possibilities. But I think from a industry business perspective, we're going to move to a point where the consumer culture is going to evolve, which is going to force industries to evolve. And if you don't evolve, you'll become Blockbuster. So
Yeah.
That's my opinion anyways.
I think that's a great way to put it. And I think a lot of people are at risk of becoming Blockbuster and, Web2 at the moment. I guess maybe
As
one
they
thing.
should.
Yeah. Because, economic cycles need companies to fade and new ones to come up, for the cycle to actually work. Interesting. I want to pick on something that you said in there. When it comes to the cycle that you see Web3 companies kind of coming into, how large do you think the risk that they start mirroring what has been happening in Web2 and kind of create the same loop over again? How do we kind of have circuit breakers in place to stop the next Nike, like the next Web3 shoe company just becomes Nike and becomes just as silly, gate kept, and another problem basically?
I mean, for me, I think it's largely, information is power. And so I think you need an informed consumer base. So I think the best you can do, at least like in this early stage, is find authenticity. Find people who have, and it's not just because of us, but like, I look for projects, generally speaking, of like teams that like come from Web3, not that were Web2 savants and then entered the space and dropped something. Like, yeah, that might work, but to your point, how do we know you're not here just to pump some bags and get the heck out? So I think there's a level of trust, prove it. You really got to demonstrate it, in my opinion. And that's kind of, I think, where things are going to head. It's also very difficult because there's a lot of people in general in this space that are here just to make money at any cost. And that also creates obstacles for the entire space. So I think it's just a matter of like, let's say us or like, Fringe, who's doing a great job with their world building around the movie that they made and expanding it to create more access for their fans and doing more than just one movie. They're building a world now, right? Like around their IP. Like giving projects like that the limelight, and obviously like Jenkins the Valet, who's innovating in new ways, and really emphasizing that like that's what people should be gravitating to. Like if you're going to speculate, at least speculate on things that are like actually innovating the entire space and helping all of us at simultaneously, rather than the next pump and dump PFP thing that nobody actually cares about. So it's hard because it's such a layered issue. But I think the best thing we can do is have an informed kind of ambassadorship in Web3, so that when new people come in, there's some trust there and we can more easily go, these are ones that have legitimacy, these are ones that could have legitimacy, and these are ones that you should probably be more cautious about. And just to give people, and you can't really tell people, but at least like having some sort of information, just broadly speaking, especially when people start coming into this space not for financial gain, because right now it largely is people just looking to flip to make money. But at some point, let's say the Star Wars project. Star Wars has an immense project. You get utility. You get to, like Mike said, tell the lore of a future Star Wars movie. Like people aren't going to give a shit about a return on investment. Like you're going to have super Star Wars fans that are just here because I'll pay $400 for that. It's a lifetime pass to like have influence with Disney and Star Wars. Yeah, I'll pay that. I'm not even a huge Star Wars fan. I think I would pay that right now, no problem. So like that creates an opportunity for, hey, it's not everything's about the return on investment from a token. Like it's not a security. It's an experience pass. And you don't expect a return on investment when you go to Disney World, right? And spend 4 days at Disney for $2,000. That would be cool if you could, but no one gets that, right? You're paying for the experience. And so more projects that are built in this kind of experience fashion, I feel like, will separate themselves from the like degen flipping to make money security thing, and more into the like experience-based utility side of things, where, hey, maybe you can flip it and make money, but it's really all about the experience. And so, it just gives us more legitimacy, I feel like, the more that's embraced. But again, it just takes time. It's, we're in such an early adopters mindset in this whole space. And, there's just so many moving parts. Anything can happen, but yeah, it's just going to take time ultimately.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
and
Mike.
I really think that it sucks to be in any kind of bear market, but we're starting to see some of these like cash grab projects kind of wash away, and really hoping to see utility projects rise up a lot more, and hopefully people soon start to notice the real tech behind NFTs and blockchain, and what NFTs are actually capable of. Not that they're just a cartoon animal picture, but a useful case of functioning as some kind of membership pass, your gateway card into a community that's gated, where the regular person can't right click and save something and think they can get into a community or get rewarded or have the access to really unique experiences, that really kind of not just drive up the value, but also promote a more exclusive experience. Because everybody wants that VIP experience, right? Everybody that goes to a concert wants to be as close to the stage as possible. They want to be backstage. They want to be on the side of the stage. They want to meet the artist. They want to be involved. And I think that's something that NFTs are really capable of if done the right way.
No, absolutely. If you don't mind, I have a lot to say on that. I'll keep it
Yeah,
as
no.
brief as I can. But one of the things that we kind of did for our the game we put out was that the core of the game logic is actually in the NFT itself. So in order to play the game, you need to have the NFT, but it's not just like, you just need to have it so that you can like log into the site. It's the game logic is baked into the actual NFT, which was a Herculean feat in itself to get it get 24 kilobytes of data succinct enough to play a game on. But yeah, I think that's kind of what this bear market really is. It's not even just a wow, a bunch of money left the space. It's like everybody's cooling off because it's not like DJ and gambling stops being fun when everything is burning around you. And as our lead developer has always said, he's seen several cycles now. He was started in 2013 with crypto, and so he's seen 3 cycles, and every bear market is when the projects that last are building. They're building real utility into their products. They're showing up with products versus value propositions where a pump and dump project would be like, oh, we're going to promise you the world, and then we're going to take all your money and run. So I'm glad to see that you guys are really focused on the utility piece, and even going just above and beyond what utility even is defined as in this space most of the time. Like what you guys are doing is, like as you said, a full-on experience, and I think that's like a really lofty bar for other projects to aspire to.
Well, and to speak on that, to me, it's really like it's why we're here, right? Like, if I wanted to go make money, like I just had a movie that I wrote that was filmed in Australia and had other opportunities, and I basically put that to the side because Web3 presents a new way of innovation, and so to me, it's the people you want to be, I guess, supporting in this space are the ones that are pushing boundaries and really. And for everyone's betterment, right? Like that's why I like Jenkins of LA is because they were doing something that really pushes the whole space forward. And so, that to me is where it also proves that Web3 is legitimate and not a scam, right? Like, when a book comes out and you can read it on a website, and it's a new form of doing content making, like, and all this cool stuff. It's like, oh, boom, NFTs are real. They have real use case. So it just to me feels like we have like kind of like a duty to innovate, to approach it always from like how do we further things, not just like take advantage of a market, because we could have done that. Like we were positioned to do a PFP launch in 2021, probably around September, October, and we didn't because we were like, you know what, this isn't exactly what we want to do. It's not. Maybe we raise, $2-3 million, and then we kind of figure it out as we go. But, we didn't want to put our community at risk for us not delivering and kind of saying, we have an idea, give us money, millions of dollars, and maybe we'll execute it. Instead, we were like, you know what, let's build things, let's invest in ourselves and kind of demonstrate what we can do and really strategize and plan out something that actually has a lot of like, downside risk protection. And then when we go, hey guys, we've been thinking about this for a year and a half. So like strategy is not going to be the problem. Like we're going to definitely have a lot of things that a lot of projects don't have. Like we're not going to be Pixelmon. We're not going to be releasing some bullshit after we raise $60 million. Like we put in too much work and time and energy and expertise to even get anywhere close to that. So that's our hope anyways, is to really just kind of prove it first. And then when you're minting something or whatever's coming down the pipeline, your community trusts that, you're actually here to stay. And if it was a pump and dump, trust me, we had an opportunity if we wanted it and we didn't. So.
Well, thank you for making me sad, for reminding me of Pixelmon.
Did you mint?
No, God, no. I get so upset whenever I see the numbers that they pulled for something that was so obvious. Obviously, a Unity asset flip situation. Like, it's unfortunate.
Did they ever? Was it a complete rug? Like, was it like an actual like?
Might as well be.
Bye.
They managed to skirt it a little bit. They were like, okay, we're gonna spend like $3 million of this money to fix the game and to make a proper game. It's like, so where's the other 57?
Where's the 55?
All split up between the team. So I can imagine that essentially it was a rug, but
that hurts. Well, and also the reason also it's bad is it really hurts projects that are legitimate, and not just even, let's say, us, but like there's some really good teams and projects that have a lot of potential, but it affects the whole space, man. Like it's just the kind of thing that it makes us all look bad, and then when people that got scammed and lost what at the time 9-10 grand. Like not only do they not have any liquidity to get into anything else, now they don't trust shit, and you know, so it really sucks. Like that's why sometimes, like even when blue chips make mistakes, like I probably shouldn't, but sometimes I call them out. I'm like, this is unacceptable. Like when Bored Ape Yacht Club lost 200 million to gas, it's just unacceptable. It just can't, like, especially as a leader in the space, like that's the kind of thing that makes us all suffer, all look bad. We lose $200 million of liquidity in the NFT market. Jesus effing Christ. And it's just like we can't let people off the hook for that kind of stuff because it literally affects all of us. Like everyone's bags were affected by that, right?
Yeah, the whole space, and it's like that in like Formula One racing. When there's a really bad accident, it's bad for the sport.
Yep.
Because then like there's like crazy regulations that come into place, and you know, it kind of, when you lose that safety, and it's like that in our space too, when you don't, when something goes wrong, it's, and in such an early industry like this, it's kind of you know, it's frowned upon, especially from outsiders who are scared to jump in. It's like, oh well, it's a scam, and it's a rug, and yeah. So anytime you see that from a big project, it's
well, and
yeah.
honestly, I'm scared for them. If you're like, to a large degree, it's like if you don't know what you're doing, like be careful. And so, and that's part of what we want to do with Block of Horror is because the horror community is so strong, and the film community, you know, it is. That's why we got OX Quit and we have Halburn. Is to really hopefully create that pathway that so when new people are like, I'm gonna test this out, I'm gonna go do it, like we can go, we got you, we're not gonna let you get fucked, not by us, like that, or you know, because it's so important for them to feel like they can trust the process because it's not easy. There's a lot for them to learn, there's a lot to figure out, but make it easy for them to start, get them further, get them comfortable, understand the tech, understand how to, you know, be safe, and what to do, what not to do, you know, the best we can at least. And so that way, if something happens, like it's not going to be because of us getting greedy or doing some, you know, bad behavior type thing.
No, I think that's some really good insight into kind of, I think, what we're all walking into all the time when we want to launch a new product. Now, we are coming up on time, but I want to give you guys one quick chance to shout something out. I would love, if you don't want to, it's not fine, but I would love to hear the like 1 minute pitch on why ENS domains are the ultimate utility. You're on Twitter all the time. Pumping ENS. So if you, what's the skinny on that?
So I guess quickly, for me, ENS represents a truly decentralized, as much as can be at this point, protocol that has real utility. And it's the opposite of most PFPs, right? Most PFPs are gimmicks, no offense to any, that it's not about the JPEG. It's about the underlying code. And so what people buy into is the pretty picture, the cover on the book, even if there's no substance, you know, inside the book. There's nothing written. It's just, oh, I just like the cover. And so it's kind of a little bit of like a FU to PFPs, but it's actually like well before it. Vitalik reps it. It's got real utility. It's being built by a DAO to add more utility. And to me, it's, if Web3 is successful, if Ethereum is kind of the leader in Web3, or, you know, in crypto to a degree, you know, everyone's going to want a .eth name, like a domain name, like a screen name. And so to me, it's where, you know, just looking at .com hype and stuff like that, that's how I look at it from at least like a degenning type way. And that's why I like the digits personally, is at some point, and again, ETH could crash and burn. You know, I think anything's possible still. So it's very speculative, but if ETH is successful, I think you'll have some of these domains hold value well. And it's a way to also diversify your identity, because a lot of people create identities around a JPEG. Oh, my Bored Ape. Oh, my Punk. Oh, my Crypto Kitty, like whatever. But What happens when they get sued? What happens when the brand sells to Yuga? What happens when the whole project tanks? Then your identity is fucking screwed. And it's like, it's not fair to you. Like, you build your presence, you have people who trust you. Now they don't, because, well, they don't like your PFP. So it's actually kind of risky if you're a successful kind of personal brand. That's why I think a lot of like successful people don't want a PFP that come in from Web 2, is because, well, my brand personally is better than what this PFP represents. So what can they do? Have an ENS name. Be John.eth. There's only one, and that's the most popular name in English, right? So, or be a number, 007.eth. You're 007. There can only be one. Sounds pretty impressive to me if you want clout instead of a monkey JPEG. So, in my opinion, it's a diversification away from branding yourself with a PFP, JPEG type thing. So
That's a great way to put it. I am officially medium bullish on ENS, mainly because I've only got
I mean, in all honesty, ENS is also the cheapest entry
absolutely.
point to NFTs, really. So honestly, anyone should. That's how I started.
Well,
It meant
especially
your name.
especially with gas being what it is right now. I mean, it's like
Oh yeah, it's
maybe
like
$12,
Yeah,
total.
not even. Well,
Yeah,
it's cheap.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's real cheap.
and the use case is good. I mean, again, you can tag a website on your ENS. You can
Yeah,
tag your socials, your wallets, your different wallets, BTC, all of it. So
yeah,
and I think there's more coming down the line. There's subdomains that you're going to be able to add to it.
I did see that.
So yeah, it's a lot of use case. So,
Well,
and
maybe we'll
again, the
get you
whole
back
point of
on.
NFTs, yeah,
We'll get you
and
back on
again,
for another
NFTs are about utility. Like
Yeah,
it should be about utility first. So,
no, totally.
in my opinion.
And that that's what I appreciate about you guys is it's the utility first, and then finding ways to kind of build the popular parts of NFT culture around it, and say, here, we're giving you guys a solidly good product, just on all four corners of this thing. Here you go. Now, Mike, was there anything that you wanted to shout out that you've been interested in or want to talk a bit about?
Oh man. We've just been real heads down on this project and sort of laying the foundation for what's to come. As all the whole team, the three founders here, we're very creative people. We work in Hollywood. Like Zach said, he's a writer. He's also a producer. I'm an editor and a director. And David, our third founder, he's also a producer and an actor. So kind of coming together, we're really trying to present the best creative experience possible for the community and do something game changing and revolutionary to bring a lot of new people into the space and like I said earlier, break that wall and 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 kind of just implement new ways of storytelling and doing things and making these decisions and having really crazy awesome outcomes. And yeah, that's really it, man. It's just been so focused on this. I haven't really been looking at too many other things. But yeah, really just exploring the tech and what NFTs and blockchain really have to offer. I think that's really the future here.
Well, yeah, man. Thank you so much for both of you guys to come on. It's been a pleasure to chat with you, kind of all over the place on NFTs and horror as a genre, and kind of your philosophy behind creating a actual Web3 company. So, thank you so much for being here, guys. Where can our community find you?
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter, Block of Horror, or our Discord, which is through the Twitter or blockofhorror.com. Any of those can link you to all of that you would need access to. And you can always hit us up on Twitter or wherever, and happy to answer any questions or have a chat, as they say.
Yeah, and if blockofhorror.com, everything's on there. There's lots of really easy to digest information on the project there. We have a white paper called the Blood Paper, and if you really want to do a deep dive into our ethos and the project itself, there's lots of information there that you can absorb. And just like Zach said, join the Discord, hit us up on Twitter or Discord, and we are currently in the process of bloodlisting our Discord members and people who are joining the space. We're holding some contests and stuff, but we have this free mint coming up very soon called the Prologue, and we're bloodlisting folks to claim that free mint. So come on in, the water's warm, and yeah, we're very excited to build and create with you.
Well, thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Bottom. If you would like to learn more about Dogira and Dogira Studios, please consider heading over to our websites, dogira.net or dogira.finance, where you can find out more about our project, our token, our products, and our DeFi platform. I'm your host, Elijah McDougall, and I look forward to catching you on the next one.